In this week's podcast, we talk to actor Tom Chambers about a brand new online play called Apollo 13, The Dark Side of the Moon, which you can stream from October 8th till December the 31st. Thanks again to everyone who has subscribed or left a review on their favourite podcast platform. Don't forget to come and find us on social media at Space and Things 1 on Twitter and at Space and Things Podcast on Facebook and Instagram. A special thanks to those who have joined us over on Patreon too, www.patreon.com/Space and Things. But right now, sit back and enjoy episode 5 of the Space and Things podcast.
You're listening to the Space and Things podcast with Emily Carney and Dave Giles.
Hello, I'm Dave Giles and welcome to episode 5 of Space and Things. I'm all alone this week. About 2 hours before Emily and I were due to record, we heard the news of the unexpected death of Hallonquist. I really hope I'm saying his name correct. One of Emily's friends and a big character within the space world. If you're on Space Hipsters, on the Space Hipsters Facebook page, then I'm sure you've seen numerous tributes. But I thought I'd read this one from David Chudwin. Al collected friends like some people collect postage stamps, and it was a pleasure for me to get to know him at the space events from 2006 onwards. Uncle Al was the astronaut wrangler for many of these space shows. He was a close friend with numerous aviators, test pilots, and astronauts who trusted his selfless dedication to the aerospace community. Al had a background in law enforcement, although he had been retired for many years. Al was devoted to his family, and grandson Blake often accompanied him to space events. Al was a big man with an even bigger heart, and I shall miss his voice, great sense of humour, and friendliness. Rest in peace. I personally never met him, but reading some of these tributes, he really did seem like a great guy. So I would, of course, like to extend my condolences to his family, friends, and all who knew him. But yeah, this week, you just have me, but Emily will be back next week.
Kane, we've got one more item for you when you get a chance. We'd like you to stir up your cryo tanks.
So a quick roundup of events that have happened this week. At the end of last episode, I said it looked like we had a weekend of launches coming up with Blue Origin, SpaceX and United Launch Alliance all due to have some launches. However, at the time of recording this, none of these launches have actually been able to happen. Combination of weather and technical problems has seen delays and scrubs. But hopefully that means we have a bumper week this week, which is always fun. There's been a couple of minor dramas on the International Space Station with a maneuver performed last week to avoid a large piece of space junk, which was travelling pretty fast into the path of the station. And there has been a small air leak, which has taken some time to locate. Whilst they are currently not concerned with the size of the leak, it is obviously important that they find it. The station has been inhabited for about 20 years now, and I guess it's easy for us to forget the hazards which can harm the astronauts and cosmonauts on board while they're in orbit. But this certainly is a timely reminder. Talking of the space station, NASA and SpaceX have had a press launch for the next Crew Dragon launch, targeting a launch date of the 31st of October at 2:40 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. The crew of NASA astronauts Michael Hopkins, Victor Glover, and Shannon Walker, along with Soichi Noguchi, I really hope I'm saying that right as well, of the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency, will launch from Kennedy Space Center. I'm not a gambling man. Actually, let me rephrase that. I am a gambling man, but I don't have any money. But I would bet a pretty sum that this launch will not go ahead on that date. But we can keep our fingers crossed, of course. They'll be going on board the space station for 6 months. And after the UK government have announced recently that it's unlikely I'm going to be able to perform any gigs for the next 6 months, I wouldn't mind going with them. It sucks to be me. Anyway, finally, another find from within our solar system. Researchers have discovered 3 more underground lakes on Mars. Due to the, I don't know if it's a lack of atmosphere or thin atmosphere, water on the surface doesn't really last long or at all on the surface of Mars. But underground, it's a different story. And this discovery is in the same area as a lake discovered in 2018. The lakes discovered this time cover, I think, 1/5 the size of Germany, so they're pretty big. This is great news for those of us hoping to find life on Mars, or hoping that we might be able to settle on Mars ourselves. Although it is thought that these lakes are particularly salty, about 5 times, I don't know, but I think I've read 5 times. I may have made that up. They're a lot saltier than our own seawater, which unfortunately might make the prospect of life within them being quite low. But of course, I don't know how they make these discoveries or whether they've tested the water, so maybe that's all rubbish as well. We shall see. But I will post links in the description of this post with full articles so you can read up on this for yourselves. And I hope you learned something, probably more than I did. But it is a fascinating find either way.
Stand by 1. Yeah, I got him with the Kevin reprint now being there, Jack. Every time he does that, our hearts jump in our mouths.
Now, those of you who follow my music career will be aware that I released a song in July called Maggie Knows, about a wonderful woman called Maggie who I met in January of this year, which seems forever ago. Maggie dropped me an email last month informing me of a new online play which I might enjoy, called Apollo 13, Dark Side of the Moon. Maggie does indeed know. So I booked myself a ticket. And then I sent an email to the theatre production company to find out some more information for the podcast. And to my delight, they sorted me out with an interview of one of the stars. So a bit of background information. I'm going to read this from the official press release. The original theatre company are delighted to present a new commission by Torben Betts, Apollo 13, The Dark Side of the Moon. The production will be available to watch via originaltheatreonline.com from 7:30 p.m. on Thursday, 8th of October until Thursday, the 31st December 2020. I'm guessing that's British Standard Time. The play interweaves the dramatic events of 1970 with a present-day account by the 2 surviving astronauts, Lovell and Hayes. Torben Betts said, "I was delighted when Alistair asked me to write a new play about the ill-fated voyage of Apollo 13, which took place 50 years ago. I have long been a bit of a space nerd, and like many last summer, I was transfixed by the various TV specials about the 1969 moon landings. Letting my imagination spend so much time floating around in space to write this has been a welcome relief from the situation on the ground at the moment, and has also helped me put things in a little bit of perspective." Co-director Charlotte Peters said, "Having explored the new genre with our recent production of Birdsong, it's really exciting me to pushing the online film boundaries further with this original adaptation of Apollo 13, both in terms of new filming techniques and inventive movement. I can't think of a better project to bring this medium, as it interweaves an out-of-this-world true story with familiar themes of isolation, helplessness, and an irrational sense of hope." So back to me. This all seems very interesting, and I'm actually excited about watching it, with some bemusement of how they're actually going to make all this happen. Anyway, a few weeks back, I spoke to Tom Chambers, who's going to be playing Jack Swigert. British listeners may know Tom from Holby City or Waterloo Road, and he won season 6 of Strictly Come Dancing. And this is what happened when we spoke.
Houston, we've had a problem.
Welcome, Tom. Tom Chambers, thank you very much for joining us on Space and Things.
It's great.
It's great to have you on.
It's great to see your face. I can actually see your face. There you are. And I'm just saying, I'm loving your guitars that you've got lined up. You're a man of the musical world. I mean, music in outer space. How about that?
Yeah. Yeah, it's something I've tried to combine as well. I've actually got a song about one of the Apollo astronauts called The Last Man on the Moon, which is one of my more successful songs, which is also nice when you can merge a hobby together and with your job. That's always fun.
Yeah.
Which does bring me on to you've obviously are now in a play called Apollo 13, Dark Side of the Moon. It's an online play. And is this a passion of yours, space travel and Apollo 13, or is this just a job that you've fallen into?
Oh, my word. Well, there's two massive, great, big worlds here. One is the absolute. I mean, as a child, looking up at the moon and thinking, how did the cow jump over the moon? I think it starts with a cow jumping over the moon. How is that possible? So the two big worlds are the love of being a child and seeing some of those films, the great, obviously Tom Hanks in Apollo 13 and any space film is just, yes, it's the mysterious world, isn't it? It's the never ending destiny into space, and then Star Wars or things like, or whether you're a Trekkie fan and all that. So space, yes, on that hand, there's always a fascination. Always, it's like looking into water you can't see beyond. What's lurking there. And then the other bit is the fact that, who wouldn't want to play an astronaut? They have to be the coolest people in the world. Is that the dedication as well for their personality to be able to perform under extreme pressure? That you are. I think that's why a lot of them were ex-fighter pilots, weren't they? Or they'd be landing. Jim Lovell getting his job before becoming an astronaut was obviously landing aircraft at night onto ships. What are they called?
Air carriers.
Air carriers. Thank you. And he said how I remember, because when we were doing the research for this and listening to him talk and the other guys and the documentaries, him saying about his how things happen in life, hopefully that somehow help you in these dire situations, a bit like our times now in COVID. Hopefully glimmers of light somewhere will appear, silver lining. He said, well, coming in at night, that all the lights had gone on the carrier. And I think it was on the carrier, or was it even in the plane? No, I think it was on the carrier.
In the plane.
Do you know this?
Yeah, in the plane. It's in his book, and it's everything's shorted out, and he had no electricity, and he couldn't see the carrier because it was dark, and they're in the Pacific, and he saw the algae in the sea.
The phosphorescence, yes. And how incredible is that story?
Yeah, just guided him home, as he says.
Oh my word! That is, of course, I forget that I'm talking to someone who knows all about space. Apologies for my ignorance. Of course, you would know that.
No, it's not ignorant at all. I was going to ask about your research for this role, because you play Jack Swigert.
Yeah.
And I wondered whether you knew of him before this as Kevin Bacon or as Jack Swigert.
I did go back to look at the film because I needed to remind myself of all the technical aspects of at which stages of the mission, where exactly did it all. Because in the script, it was quite techie and quite difficult to visualize. So I thought, right, and it did explain it quite well. And then I thought, Kevin Bacon, wow, it's you, and you look really young. So actually, no, in this case, I knew Jack Swigert first.
Fantastic.
It was only when I watched the film that I thought, oh my word, there's Kevin. Yeah. And he's so unlike Jack as well.
Yeah. It was clearly a big name cut, but in fairness, all three of them, they didn't go for people that looked like who they're playing. With perhaps exception to Gene Cernan and Ed Harris, I think there is a likeness there, but the rest of them, they weren't looking for lookalikes. And I think I like that about the film, that they didn't try and do that. Some films try and do it, and a couple of the actors do, and a couple of them don't, and then you're thinking about it. Whereas they just went, no, let's not worry about that.
Yeah, that's true, isn't it? Don't try. You need artistic license, and B, there's no point trying to. Otherwise, what are you? What are you trying to be? You're trying to be a bit like that, and you're trying to be deliver the goods in a really entertaining. And because that's the other thing is that these guys, these astronauts, are talking about the pressure and dealing with situations under pressure. It's a little bit like when I got my first job on Holby City. I had to go to the London Heart Hospital to watch open heart surgery in real life.
Wow.
And afterwards, the consultant came over and he said, "Did you see that argument between us? Did you see how we nearly lost the patient?" And I was like, "What? That was an argument? You should come around our house. I was like, if you want to see an argument, you should see it for real." And he was like, "Yeah, that was me telling him you very nearly nicked the main artery there, or and blah blah blah." But they were so measured, they were so calm, because obviously you've got a body with open chest, and they can't lose it in the same way we do. If someone's bumped your bumper in the supermarket car park, you're like, "What are you doing? Look where you're going." And that's the same with these guys in space. It's like, stay calm under pressure at all times. And yet for an audience, that you've got to, there has to be a little bit of dramatic license because it needs to be, there's the drama, there's the dramatic moment. It's like, what are you doing? you can't handle the truth.
Exactly, yeah, for sure. Obviously, this year was the 50th anniversary of the Apollo 13 mission, and one of the things that the internet did rather wonderfully was that they replayed the whole of the mission in real time with all the mission audio, some clips that obviously filmed at the time. There's a website you could just log in at any time and be like, oh, what were they up to now? And you got to the key moments and I sat up late for the Houston we have a problem moment, because I was like, I'm going to do this. It was the start of lockdown, so I had nothing else to do. But I couldn't believe how calm the voices were of the three astronauts.
Really,
and it's almost disconcerting knowing what you know, that actually they've just had an explosion on a spaceship, and the three of them sound so calm. They sound like. I don't know. Yeah,
like the fuse has just popped in the kettle.
Exactly. Or they've run out of mugs to make the tea. Oh, who's going to go and do the washing up, lads? Yeah, it's that level of calm, and maybe the surgeon has different thoughts, but even in mission control as well, the guys in mission control are incredibly calm. There's only ever like one or two moments where you pick up on something being like, yeah, they're beginning to realize this is quite big. But I think one of the reasons they didn't realize it was quite so big at first is because of how calm the astronauts were in sending down the problems.
That must be rule book number one in space, is that do not lose your head.
Yeah.
Because you just be like, because you know yourself, if you get, if it's a bit of road rage or something, or someone's beeped, why are you beeping at me? That sort of thing. It's like, that if it can stay with you for hours after that, and you're thinking about it 3 hours later in the day, and you're thinking, oh, that silly person who was, and like, no, you just need to let it go. Yeah. Otherwise it fogs your mind and fogs your decisions. And careless is actually such a great word. So true. Yeah. Emily and I were actually having this conversation recently about the fact that those first astronauts, they were all test pilots, as you mentioned. So they all came from this test pilot background where everything was very checklist orientated. Everything came from, that was the whole ethos of the moon missions. You're following your mission plan and the checklist, and you're going through everything. And anything that went wrong, there was a new checklist. Okay, let's go through the checklist. And they could keep it all together because they had this mentality. The downside is you lose some human moments, because these people are so matter of fact, and often they weren't very good at portraying, wow, I'm on the moon, or look at the moon. You and I, if we were sent out there, even just in low Earth orbit, would be like, wow, what the hell? And you don't get those moments. So, and I think that's one of the reasons why back in the 60s and 70s, after the first moon landing, people lost interest because these guys weren't very good at being emotional. Yeah. At celebrating, or it's like, this is outstanding. You cannot believe this.
Yeah.
I mean, that's half the joy, is listening to the commentators. If you can't watch something and you're listening, on the radio to the test match or the cricket or the final or the race or and he's getting down. It's passing energy on, isn't it?
For sure. So and that's where I feel like plays and films and as you spoke about earlier, they can really help capture the imagination. And when I was a kid, Apollo 13 coming out when I was 10, I was already into space, but that really helped capture that sense of awe and wow, look at what they did and how cool is that, and all that kind of stuff. Do you feel any sense of responsibility as an actor when you're portraying these kind of roles?
Yeah, I mean, the hardest thing is to convey the truth, but then also be aware of, like, you're still trying to entertain an audience, and also, I mean, I felt nervous. I know we're bouncing around all over the place, but when we were filming this, basically what happened is that I'd worked on Dial M for Murder, which hopefully, please, fingers crossed, will actually resume later on, next year or something. But the same cast, myself, Chris Harper, Michael Salami, Dial M for Murder, Alfred Hitchcock play, going on tour. And then Chris phones up and says, oh, I did originaltheatreonline.com. I did this birdsong play in your own home, just trying to make the best of everything being shut. He said, I've got involved in another one, Apollo 13, 50 anniversary. Are you in? But when they just sent it all in the post, I mean, literally, the green screen turned up, the lights turned up, the tripods, the sound equipment. It was shot on an iPhone 11, and then we had to download the software. You film it remote, so because you set your own camera up, but you can't see, you can't check yourself. So everything was having to talk to each other like we were sort of in our own little spaceship, but at home. I just did it in the quietest room in the house, which conveniently was the loft that we'd just gone up into the roof. So I did it in the quietest room in the house, which was quite hard with 3 kids who were bouncing around all. And it's still the summer holidays at the time. And it's like, get the kids out. I'm in space. But I felt nervous just trying to get it right in the comfort of my own home. I am nervous now about how it's going to come out, how it's going to look. It's coming out in October. And it's October till December, just for that limited run. So it's not going to be out there forever, which in some ways could be a good thing if we haven't done a good job. How they edit it together is going to be fascinating, because we did this via Zoom, that we were all on Zoom at the same time. The director was on Zoom. So we rehearsed on Zoom. And then when we came to filming it, same thing, all on Zoom. And then when she would say, okay, and go, like start the scene, we were hearing the voices of the other guys on Zoom. But then we had our own microphone here, so it wasn't too much interference. And we basically filmed the whole scene, and then we'd finish that scene and move on to the next, or it'd bounce around. So that's how we actually did it. So I have no idea how they're actually going to string this together and put it together and make it. I mean, it's going to be quite, well, it's a mystery at the moment.
Yeah. So you're just as intrigued to watch it as I am right now.
Yeah, I am. I think it was really well written as well, actually. Consideration. Torben Betts, who's written it, obviously he's not gone to the film. He's gone to the transcripts and the conversation and all that. So it's quite powerful. I mean, obviously, to get the chance to say, Houston, we have a problem. Yeah. in my best American accent. It's just lines like that you do not want, you don't want to mess up. I mean, that's silly, but it still crosses your mind.
Yeah. We have a couple of patrons and we have a tier, an astronaut tier, where they get to ask questions of our guests. So Amar has asked a question which I think is relevant now. So I'm going to drop this in. He said, obviously you've played a doctor and now you played an astronaut. Do you enjoy the challenge of learning dialogue full of jargon and complex terms? And do you try to make sure you know what you're talking about when you have passages like that?
Oh, that's such a good question. And I can tell you right now that the fear in my body, when I started trying to become, playing a doctor, a cardiothoracic registrar. I mean, I hadn't even heard of a registrar before I got it. It would be like you could see the word coming up in your mind before you got there. So you're saying the dialogue in the scene and you go, this word's coming up, it's coming up, it's coming up, it's coming up. 6 months it took to get the jargon down. So you could just say it trippingly off the tongue without even having to think about it. And one that I'm going to say is transesophageal echocardiogram. You're going to need an angiogram stat, and you can remember them because I drilled them in. It's like your daily drill. You could be out there marching about these words. And the other thing is actually it's actually the muscles in the mouth. So in terms of the second part of the question about did I know what I was talking about, I didn't know straight away. You try to get a vague idea so your brain can go, okay, what color is that? Yes, okay, that's a really serious word, or that's quite light, and that's just this is just matter of fact. If you can just say, doctors are so matter of fact. I think if you can just say something with conviction, it doesn't matter if you don't quite know what you're talking about. Yeah. A bit like life. And the most important thing is the mouth. The muscles in the mouth is just like playing a sports shot. You're taking a kick. You're kicking into the top right-hand corner, or you're taking a tennis racket and you're doing a backhand. The muscle memory, there is a memory in your muscle, and it's the same in your mouth. Your mouth has to get used to saying that word. So what I do is just say it over and over again, like transesophageal, transesophageal, transesophageal. So when on the mission, we were saying skirt set, S4B to, I've lost it now. What that was short-term memory, but all those bits of jargon, you just know you've got to be able to say it without just fluid. Was that the question?
Yeah, basically it was.
And it was, do I enjoy that? I think, it's a love-hate relationship. it's great when you practice it enough that you can. Yeah, I mean, you're just trying to fulfill the job and do the job well. But yeah, so it's a good challenge.
Did you have a consultant? Was a director well enough, or the writer well enough versed to kind of guide you if you were saying something wrong or pronouncing something wrong?
Yes, Charlotte Peters, director, and Alistair, they really knew their stuff. I mean, when we got to rehearsals, they seemed to be really on it. Whether they knew it and though they were blagging it, they sounded very convincing. They were very open to change as well. But no, a lot of it was just that they just sent us the links to everything. Some brilliant podcasts, some brilliant, tutorial documentaries, and then of course I watched the original film as well. Yeah. It's just Hollywood. So yeah, no, it was a self-motivated project really from that point of view. And we're old enough now that we're not being spoon-fed all this. We didn't have the luxury of having but we did have a brilliant movement director, Simon. Who is it? Simon Putnam, who did Curious Incident.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he was fantastic because trying to reenact being able to move around in your home, because obviously your hands can move. You can move your hands around at normal speed, but you just know that the feeling of weightlessness, which I'm trying to emulate now for you on the Zoom, you're just constantly moving. It's like you're a slug, but your sort of tentacles can move a bit faster or something like that. It's that. And actually, hopefully not giving up too much away, but the gym ball, the big blow up bouncy gym ball or birthing ball, but sitting on that, rather than sitting on a stool, you could just gently kind of move your bottom around on it, and you'd always be sort of giving off the impression that you were slightly weightless.
Genius.
Yes. Who would have known? We're sitting on a giant blow up ball to give the impression of zero gravity. Takeoff, we had a genuine this fan in America had recreated one of the original spacesuits, and it's not an original, but he'd replicated it. So that was one of the biggest bits of the production of this particular, very DIY, homemade theatre online thing. Is it was a suit, and we had to go into a studio for that because the suit itself was quite valuable. I.e., they had to insure the suit because you're going to get 3 actors going. Apparently, Ryan Gosling was in that suit for the
First Man.
Yes, which of course you must have seen. So because of COVID, we had to have 72 hours between. We had one suit for 3 men.
Wow.
So we had to do the same day 3 times. So we would be on Zoom when it was someone else's turn. They'd be in the studio, which is basically just a big room somewhere in West London that was convenient for everyone to get to. And so they would be in the spacesuit, and they'd be like doing all the, and they would be jiggling about as the G's came on, 1G and 4G and all that sort of. Whereas we'd be at home filling in the lines, just going, yeah, okay, you're right on trajectory, Jim, and you're right on, yeah. And it's fun, but then I had to wait 3 days for the next person, then 3 days for the next person, then in between those 3 days, we'd obviously do the other scenes. But yeah, Ryan Gosling wore that suit. That was our little claim. It was like, hey, we're not the only person who's been in this suit, because he was in that very particular. So when you watch this, mark my words, you can have a look at, you can watch that and go, that's the suit that Ryan Gosling wore in First Man.
I love that. That's a wonderful stat there.
That's a good factoid.
Yeah,
that's a good fact. Yeah.
Have you got any final thoughts of things you'd like to say? For me, the Apollo 13 mission is really apt for this year, because it is about facing adversity and not losing hope. But do you have any other thoughts you have on portraying Jack Swigert or the play as it's about to come out?
Yeah, I just feel that obviously this was that they thought that the parallel universe of what's going on in real life and the parallel universe of these 3 guys' claustrophobic place in space and the fear of the unknown, the solutions, the making the best of. So it feels like it hopefully will be sort of quite a poignant reflector for people, when they can tune in and have a look at this when it's available in October. It's also, it's a mongrel. It's not theatre. It's the best of trying to make theatre available in your own home, but it's not a big multi-million-pound Hollywood budget. So hopefully that's also partly the interest, is what can be done with little in a small space, but make it good and valuable. And it's all about storytelling and that. So I just think it's a really, really well written, nice piece of work that connects to everything that's been going on in the last 6 months. And we're creatures of togetherness is one of the main points about all this. And actually micro exchanges that I was hearing about last week is how important, even just waving at the postman or post lady or at a neighbor, or just saying hello, or letting someone come through a doorway. All these micro exchanges, they're small things, but collectively they make up a big deal of your kind of overall well-being and happiness. And that's why we know as humans, being confined, trapped in this very small space called our own living rooms during this time, that sense of being trapped, but keeping you cool and just knowing, keeping a ray of hope and all that sort of thing. Because I mean, it's an incredible story, this. And the fact that, like you said, people sort of lost interest because, well, it's been done. It was actually the fact that it was a near absolute incredible disaster to have an explosion. For the side of your vehicle to blow up in outer space. I mean, that's just like game over. And you're how many days away from getting back to the garage to fix it? So simple, Simon says. So no, it's just a really wonderful thing to be a part of, because we're all just, we're all just doing our best right now.
Yeah. Well, good luck with it. I hope it goes really well. I'm looking forward to watching it myself. A friend of mine sent me the link, said, you've got to watch this. I was like, oh yes, I do. I'm going to have to watch it. And
good.
So I'm glad we've been able to have a talk and find out a little bit more about how it was done. I'm fascinated by the fact you all were at home on your own, and it's I have no idea how it's going to come out. And you're right. Yeah, have to remember, this isn't a Hollywood production. But the story is strong enough that I don't think it needs to be. Yeah.
It's the scripts and the acting, and it's this bigger gamble for me as well, because obviously we're all doing American as well, and you're like, oh, did that really sound American? We're doing our best under the premise that we have, but I think that if I was someone watching, I'd go, actually, I don't want to watch a multi-million-pound great big budget. I don't want to, those big outer space films, huge budgets. Whereas I thought, I want to try something slightly different where it's not quite as big.
Yeah.
And it's like, I can't go to the theatre, but I'll get as close to it, because it's kind of a cozy theatre experience without being all the bells and whistles. So I think it's just intrigue more than anything.
I think it's a great project. I think it's ambitious, and because even the idea of doing any kind of space thing on a stage is crazy, let alone everyone in their house isolated. It's a wonderful idea, and I really hope it works out well for you, and people respect that you've done it the hard way, and that you're at least trying to do something different and new to bring art to people and to give people some escapism, and a story which hopefully will fill people with hope as well.
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
Thanks so much, Tom. I've really enjoyed getting to hear your stories about this, and thanks for spending some time with me.
You're welcome.
And good luck with it all.
Thanks a lot.
Odyssey Houston, we show you on the mains. It really looks great.
What a lovely man Tom is. It's so open. I really felt like we were old friends as we were talking. He really took the time to get to know me a little bit before we started the interview. It was such a lovely, lovely man. So I hope you enjoyed that interview. I love the fact that he's honest enough to admit that he's nervous about how this is going to appear and how it's going to come out. But this interview really made me more excited to watch the play when it comes out. Hopefully it may have got you intrigued as well. And you can book your tickets at www.originaltheatreonline.com. I'll give my thoughts on it in a couple of weeks when I've been able to watch it. But if anyone else books a ticket and watches it, please let me know what you think. It's not just a UK thing either. You can book a ticket to watch this from any part of the world. I made sure I asked about that. The full unedited video of the interview with Tom is available for our Patreon subscribers. He did a few visual demonstrations of how he acted out weightlessness, which just didn't really work in podcast form. So you can watch that over there if you're interested.
This is the crew of Apollo 13. Wish everybody there a nice evening, and we're just about ready to close out our inspection of Enquiries and get back for a pleasant evening at Odyssey. Good night.
So that's all we have time for this week. I know it's not the same without Emily, and this is always going to be better when it's a conversation rather than just me talking into a microphone. But she will be back next week, and obviously this is how it had to be this week. Normal service shall resume, and a massive thank you to all those who have listened this far. I hope you've enjoyed the interview and my roundup of the news as I saw it. So please do get in contact on social media and let me know what you thought. And tune in next week. But remember, in space, no one can hear you stream.
Space and Things has been brought to you by And Things Productions.